Bienvenida.
Bienvenidas, comadres and friends, to our December 2020 teleconference, our final one for this year. This is Karen Gonzalez, Las Comadres para las Americas Denver Book Club coordinator. We wish you and your familias health and safety and love. We encourage you to put laughter into your life. Prayer and laughter help us relieve stress. I suspect we all need all the help we can get. We also want to take a moment to wish you all a Feliz Navidad and a Happy New Year. Podcasts are now being uploaded to our website. Feel free to download to listen to any of your favorite interviews. Mil gracias to Comadre Dora Abreu for doing this labor of love for us. Our December 2020 teleconference features Book of the Month author Samantha Mabry and additional conversations with author Teresa Dovalpage. First, a bit of history about our book club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York at Comadre Maria Ferrar's apartment. After a hiatus, it was restarted in March 2007. Comadre Johanna Castillo, at that time national organizer of the book club and former Comadres board member, said, "We are launching the book club to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our writers. Now more than ever, we need to support our Latino authors. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city. We have clubs in 12 cities. They are all meeting virtually now. There is sure to be one that can fit your schedule. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. We started these teleconferences reading with Las Comadres in October of 2006. We are in our 14th year. We created the Reading with Las Comadres teleconferences and book club in an effort to entice everyone to read more Latino authors and to learn about Latino roots and different perspectives on Latino cultures and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. So please invite others to join us. We are very grateful to the publishers, Algonquin and Soho Crime, for their support of this teleconference with free books. For more information about the authors and publishers, visit our website at latinolit.com. Our Book of the Month author, Samantha Mabry, will be interviewed by Laura Esparza. Let's learn a little bit about Samantha. Samantha Mabry credits her tendency toward magical thinking to her grandmother, Garcia, who would wash money in the kitchen sink to rinse off any bad spirits. She teaches writing and Latino literature at community college in Dallas, where she lives with her husband, a historian, and a cat named Mouse. She is the author of A Fierce and Subtle Poison and All the Wind in the World. Our interviewer, Comadre Laura Esparza, is currently the division manager for the Division of Museums and Cultural Programs for the City of Austin's Park and Recreation Department, where she oversees 12 arts facilities, including historic house museums and cultural centers across Austin. Laura has been a member and coordinator for the past 15 years of the Las Comadres and Friends South Austin Book Club. Comadre Laura, take it away.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you this evening, Samantha. Greetings from Austin, Texas.
Yes, greetings from Dallas, Texas.
Oh, great. So, congratulations on your third book. I can't believe that you finished it while teaching and having your child. That's Wonder Woman material.
He was sleeping a lot then, and I felt like I could write it in like 2-hour spurts, during his many naps. He doesn't sleep very much anymore, but yeah.
So it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's so provocative and mysterious. You captured San Antonio so well. I grew up there in San Antonio. And I know your mother grew up in South Texas, but you grew up in Dallas. How did you get to know San Antonio so well?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. What I was trying to do when I was setting the book in San Antonio was my mother's from Mission, so that's a town on the Texas-Mexico border, so more south than San Antonio, right? But I have never been to Mission. I've never been to the border. But I wanted a location, a city that had a similar kind of entrenched Mexican and Mexican American culture, like multi-generational families. And so I have a family that lives in Austin, and I'm somewhat familiar with San Antonio. I've never lived there, but I have, been there. And since I've never been to Mission or that part of the state, I just wanted to have some kind of familiarity with the place. And so that's why I chose San Antonio. But I'm glad that it was. I'm glad that it felt real to you.
It was really, I got a very authentic feel of Southtown in particular. And, growing up in San Antonio, I could recall at least 3 households with an absent parent where the daughters were raising themselves. And my comadre Lydia from McAllen, she calls these feral children. So is this a phenomenon in the Mexican community that you witnessed?
I was basing, there's 3 sisters in this novel, right? And there's 4, but there's one who has died before the novel starts. And I was basing them off of, again, my mother and her sisters. And, she didn't grow up in quite that kind of household, but there was a sense that they were older than they should have been, like taking care of each other, taking care of their parents, taking, just sort of this sense of having more responsibility than they probably should have had at that age,
Yeah. And all the boys in the book seem to have mothers or lovers that dote on them, While the book really focuses on the girls, the men in the book have, big problems of their own. One of your readers wrote me to ask, so what was Rafe's real problem? Was he always an alcoholic? Or was it just the death of his wife that drove him? Or was it his daughters that drove him to drink?
Wow, what a question. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to think of for me anyway, I don't want to speak with all authors, but sometimes it's hard for me to think of like who a character is beyond who they are on the page. Because then what that does is like complicates them in my mind more than I should. Like I can work with someone if I know their parameters almost. But
yeah, I hear you.
Gosh, I don't know.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you chose to have the little boys speak in third person while the girls spoke in first person. Why did you make that choice?
I based that off of a book called The Virgin Suicides, which is by Jeffrey Eumenides, and it was made into a movie recently. And that book is the entire thing is in first person plural, like a voice of we, except they are adults narrating the past, right? And so I always was just really captured by this sense of a chorus. Like I wanted to have a book that had a Greek chorus in it. And that book did it all the way through. And so but I wanted it to be, not a nostalgic voice or anyone sort of narrating the past, but these boys very much in the present. It's barely in past tense, but it's mostly, concurrent with their lives.
Yeah, that was a really interesting choice for me, because the boys seemed like a unit, right? And the girls were like individuals. They were individual persons. So that it made it more real for me. It made them more. the title of the book is really fabulous. And as I recall, I think you mentioned it came from a line from the play King Lear, a play about daughters with a dysfunctional relationship with their father. Were there other parallels with King Lear that you were thinking about when writing the book?
I think that maybe when I was first conceiving of the book, there were, I didn't, the daughters in King Lear want something from their father, whereas the daughters in my book, I don't know. Part of me thinks they've kind of given up on him, except for the oldest surviving one who kind of wants him to be there still. I just was really, more than anything, captivated by the line. It was when I had gone and seen it. It was Alice Does a Shakespeare in the Park, and that line it's delivered as an insult. It's delivered with so much hate. And it's not Lear who says it. It's Lord Albany who says, you are tigers, not daughters, as if that's a bad thing. And my thinking when I heard that was that did not sound like an insult to me. That sounded like something that could be, really, really interesting and really powerful, and how I think that this is hard to say, in the sense of sort of especially the family that my mother grew up in, that there is a sense that there should always be respect, and that, as we know, not all fathers deserve respect just because they're fathers, And so I wanted to, write this universe where that line was not an insult, but a compliment.
Or a necessity.
Yeah.
To survive the world that they existed in. The writer Julia Alvarez called your book, what did she say, The Magical Little Women, which made me howl, because there's this scene in that movie, The New Little Women, where all the girls get into a fight and they end up in a heap of skirts and petticoats on the floor, the way, the little girls were fierce. They were tigers even. So did you get a sense of what fights were like between your mother and her sisters?
Just as just kind of, witnessing them as adults. It was they were, in a way, from what I gather, no one really talks about this a lot, so it's just kind of putting on your investigator hat and reading between the lines, right? But I kind of got the sense that there's no mother figure in my book, but that their mother kind of, I don't even know how to say it, pitted them against one another, sort of created conflict and controversy. So there was and is a lot of distrust, and sort of they use each other against the other, in a sort of triangulation thing. But no, that when Julia said that, I just about fell over. But the other thing is that I had never read Little Women. I still have not read Little Women. I did see the film and did did see the parallels, but I also don't have any sisters, right? And Julia was like, what? So, I was just able to draw on what I felt was a really a dynamic of sisters a lot in name only. They just kind of coexist in the same household. And there's some bonds between them that are stronger than others, and sometimes there's no bonds at all. And so I was trying to play with a really, really a dynamic that I wasn't super familiar with, but that I was trying to pick up on the best that I could.
It further confirms that you have a fabulous imagination.
I just was an only child, like an only child who did a lot of like spying in closets. You know, like the thing where like I could just be quietly in some space and nobody knew that I was listening in on everything that was happening.
So the haunting of this family, of the Torres family home, it feels very hostile and invasive. It's not a warm visit from a beloved sister. And this just adds tension to the, you know, what's already brewing with Rafe's breakdown on the anniversary of her death and the grief of the girls and the threatening storms and the escape of the hyena. And you get the sense that it's this cosmic storm just brewing. And for the longest time, and you don't really know what it means. What inspired you to create such a stormy world?
I have always wanted to write a ghost story, and I had written the first, I don't know exactly how many, but it seems like the first like 90 pages of this book, which was the point where I think it's a point where like Jessica sees the ghost hand in the shower or something. Like it's this sort of this moment where all the sisters realize that there's something wrong and that it's probably their sister who is haunting their house. And I could not get past that because someone would be like, well, what are you writing? What's your book about? And I'd be like, oh, there's these sisters. It's their dad. Their older sister comes back to haunt. And I would say they're trying to figure out what she wants, right? And then someone would say, well, what does she want? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like I couldn't get to what the ghost wants, which I feel like is a really important element of a ghost story. Like a ghost haunts for a reason. And it was really difficult for me to figure out what that reason was until I tried to think about it differently, which was less about what the ghost wants and more about what all the characters in the book want from the ghost. You know, so they all have, like, so we have the three sisters, we have the boys, and we have Rafe the father, all of whom kind of want something from the spirit of this sister. And so we don't even really ever know, we can't really get a picture of who that sister was because she's just made up of stories of, you know, different points of view of all the sisters and just sort of this composite girl. And so that really, if I thought about it that way, it really just sort of broke it open to be, I don't want to say less of a ghost story, but less about, you know, why is the sister here? Why is she haunting the house, as opposed to what are these sisters, what are these people going to do now that this person that was so important to them has come back, and they all have very different reactions to her.
Right. She becomes kind of like the cog that pushes everyone into a decision that changes their lives. Mm-hmm. And I've got to ask you this before we end this interview, because I just have to know what happened to John Chavez when he got locked up in the house with the ghost of Anna. Was this simply poetic justice?
Okay, so again, this is like the Rafe question, which now that I'm thinking about more, I think that he is just a person who cannot be alone. And like, I feel like that is people, that is some people, that is lots of men, right? And that's how he is. John is kind of like that too. You know, the first draft of this book that I submitted to my editor had a kind of a proper epilogue. There's two chapters that are kind of epilogue-ish for this, but there was one where it was like, and then Rafe went here, and then John went here and did something, and it just sounded like, I don't know. And then, people are asking, what happened to John? And my immediate response is, I don't care. Like, I don't know because I don't care. I do think that he was confronted, I don't know how, right? But like was confronted by Anna in some way because he abandoned her or was responsible for her, essentially. Like I'm kind of making, this is not like set in the book, but like he bears some responsibility and he bears some blame. And so he gets some kind of comeuppance, but I don't really know what it is. And I did really try to kind of figure out what it is until I realized that I don't care. And, wondered also how much people would care. I've been asked that before. And like people at my publishing house, they all have like different theories. I don't know. So, like,
I imagine his hair white. And he never left his mother's house again. How old was he in your mind? Was he in high school?
He was older. I think he was 19 in my mind.
Yeah. Well, he was deserving of whatever he got.
Yeah.
And the irony is that the only decent guy in their lives happens to be the one that runs over Jessica in the street.
I know. And I was explaining this again to a friend. Go ahead.
You wonder, why doesn't anyone help them? I mean, who is going to love these girls? Why doesn't someone at the school or the neighborhood or the aunt,
I mean, I thought that, like, I feel like there is, the aunt does, I don't know, I think that sometimes there's rules in, I don't know, I don't give them a school, right? It's in the summer, and it takes place over a real short amount of time in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
they kind of are on their own. I sometimes feel like there are rules within some, neighborhoods or very small sort of cultures that are like, that, you don't mess with someone else's family. Like a family kind of takes care of itself. And that Rafe is not threatening. He's just kind of pathetic, right? And so there's no real threat, there's no real, like, danger. And so when do you step in when that kind of person is the head of the household?
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. They also don't have any friends.
Yeah.
Poor girls.
They're one of those families, on the corner, that just like they live in their own little angst, and no one really quite knows how to reach them, and they're a little scary. Their father, along with all the other men in their lives, abandoned them in the end. But moreover, the sisters seem to abandon their men to embrace their own independence. Do you think this is a reflection of our condition in the 21st century?
Wow. It's hard. I don't like to. That's a hard question. I mean, because I don't want to say like a blanket. Yes, of course, right. But I do think that there is a lot that holds young women back. Mm-hmm. I think of like students that I've had at the community college who got scholarships to go to UT Austin or something, and then their dad won't let them go because they can't go anywhere, like the girls aren't supposed to leave their family and go to school. I mean, there's just these kind of these and I didn't even know how to like counsel this person, and I know that like my mother eloped to get out of the house. It was like the only way to get out of the house. It was to get married in secret. So, that's her kind of her only kind of form of independence sort of was that. So, I think that in some situations, maybe, yeah, that is what has to happen.
Oh, I really celebrated the end of the book because I felt like the girls claimed their independence, that they could see it, they could smell it, It wasn't real yet, but they were getting there and that they were going to get there. So I did see a lot of hope at the end for their realizing themselves. So you wrote another book that had what was called a post-apocalyptic setting called All the Wind in the World. But in some ways, for me, this also had kind of an emotional post-apocalyptic setting. It was really a pretty devastating world. So are ghosts our guides?
I don't know. Why do I love ghosts? I don't know how, sort of how future looking ghosts are, although there is a sense that Anna, who's the oldest, who's the ghost, is making them do something, right? Like that is when you're saying, what does the ghost want? And the only kind of vague thing I could have was like making the sisters do something. I mean, because they were not doing anything. They were really stuck in a grief cycle for a year. And then it's ultimately kind of up to them as to what that something is, but it just shakes up their life. But I do also, in a sense of, I do I like writing about the sense of ghosts as a tug, like as something that will always tether or pull back to the past, to history, to family, to a structure, something that always, I think that's also why at the end, there were options of sort of what the girls could do. And you said, there's hope at the end that they're kind of on their way. They're still in their house, right? And I was thinking, I was like, what should happen to the house? Should the house blow up, burn down? Like all this stuff that I could think about, like what happens in a house and a ghost, what happens to a house in a ghost story. But I did want them to be where they were, but different, and so that there is a sense of rootedness, but also difference. And I'm always really interested thematically in kind of writing into that balance. The novel you mentioned, All the Wind in the World, has to do with, it's set in the future, but it's more like a Western. It has, it has a kind of elements of there's no like robots, it's not that kind of future. So I do like to just kind of explore that tension between hope and moving forward, and then whatever it is that keeps us tied down or rooted down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just, sometimes I feel that we're in kind of a apocalyptic, that we had a vision of an apocalyptic world within COVID, and yet we have a little bit of hope. There's a little bit of moving forward that maybe next year will be different. Yeah, that's really interesting. Have any of your students read this book?
My students, I don't know. I don't think so. They haven't told me if they have.
Yeah.
You know, with the apocalyptic thing, just real quickly, I was not in this panel, but I went to a panel. Like I was sitting in on a panel of a conference, and it was authors who wrote about, it was called like Girls of the Apocalypse or something, and the moderator said, you know, is apocalyptic fiction a good description of your work, or would you prefer the term disaster realism? And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, sort of disaster realism. And so I like that, and I think about that too when I'm writing anything.
Yeah. Because while, you know, you were telling a story about a ghost in a family, you were also describing an emotional landscape of these girls that were really wiped out. I mean, they were devastated emotionally because of their losses, you know. So I think of it, I see in it a metaphor for how our group of girls managed the courage to face their grief and lay claim to their own destinies.
I also was thinking about, like the last time I was in San Antonio, I was and around Southtown. And I hint on this a little bit. It was like most urban centers. There's like a gentrification, right? There's a cool bar and a cool taco place. You know, like there's just this sort of encroaching of whatever it is, you know, like quote unquote progress or whatever. And so this sense of this old neighborhood and what's happening around it and how long can it be, you know, protected and how can it protect its history and its people and these houses that get passed down from person to person with, you know, the future coming in quite physically. And so, in that way I was trying to sort of mirror this, what's happening to the neighborhood, what's happening to the city, to what's happening to this family.
So true.
Final question, Laura, please.
Oh, final question. Now I'm on the hot seat because I've gone through all my questions. My last question: why did you write this book?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it had to have come. It had to have come from, you know, the King Lear line that was honestly there before the book was there. I wanted to write about my mother and her sisters, you know, just some kind of fictionalization of what their lives might have been as teenagers. And I kind of just wanted to write about Jessica in particular, who's the oldest surviving daughter, and her character as a abuse victim, but a very like strong-spirited person. I was just very interested. I don't see a lot of characters like her portrayed in young adult fiction. You know, she has this really hard time leaving her boyfriend, who's clearly terrible, and I think that is a really realistic situation that I'm not in any way trying to like glorify, but just trying to to put into young adult fiction that I hadn't seen before.
Congratulations on being named Best Young Adult Fiction for 2020 by Kirkus Review.
Oh, thanks.
Fascinating novel. Thank you, Samantha. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for having me so much.
Thank you, comadres. Comadre Karen?
Okay, our additional conversations with author is Teresa Dovalpage. Teresa Dovalpage was born in Havana and now lives in Hobbs, where she is a Spanish and ESL professor at New Mexico Junior College. She has published 11 novels and 3 collections of short stories. Her Havana mystery series, published by Soho Crime, started with the culinary mystery Death Comes In Through the Kitchen, 2018, set in Havana and featuring Padrino, a Santero detective. It is loaded with authentic Cuban recipes. The second mystery, Queen of Bones, 2019, includes elements of Santeria and, again, food. Clearly, the author loves to eat. Both novels are rich in details about life on the island, the kind only an insider can provide. The third is Death of a Telenovela Star, 2020, set on a Caribbean cruise and showcasing the dark, sometimes deadly, side of celebrity, as well as the shenanigans that often happen aboard a cruise ship. Upcoming is Death Under the Proceeds. Our interviewer, Comadre Julia Abrantes, is a stalwart of Las Comadres who for many years nourished our New York City comadrazos with love and passion. She is an avid reader and attends all the book conferences possible to learn about books by Latinx authors and to share this info with our comadres, compadres, and friends. Julia now lives in Loganville, Georgia. Comadre Julia, take it away.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome, Teresa. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. Thank you so much for inviting me. Muchas gracias. I'm so happy to be back with you guys con Las Comadres de nuevo.
Thank you again so much for being a part of our teleconference series. We are a big fan of your work, and we were so happy to see the final book in this trilogy, The Death of a Telenovela Star. I have learned from reading your books that I have to make sure that I've eaten before I start reading, because there's always a recipe or something there that makes me hungry.
Well, I try to do that. It's kind of on purpose.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So once again, so this is the third book in the series, and we're following Detective Marlene Martinez, and now she's retired. Will you tell our readers a little bit about the book and about Marlene if they hadn't read your other books in the series?
Okay, this novella was originally published on the Taos News. It's a local newspaper in Taos, New Mexico, where I used to work as a reporter. But after I moved to Hobbs, where I live now, I couldn't continue doing freelance work for them in the usual way. There were no interesting stories that I could chase around town, so they allowed me to publish fiction there. And then I decided to use some of my characters from my previous novels, That Comes Into the Kitchen and Queen of Bones. And one of them is Marlene Martinez. Marlene used to be a cop in Cuba. In the first 2 books, she appears working in the Cuban police force and solving the crimes. But by the third book, Death of a Telenovela Star, she's in Miami and she's a bakery owner. Her bakery is called La Vaqueria Cubana. So I kind of came up with the story as I was writing it, and it was published in the Taos News while I wrote it. And I got a lot of feedback from the readers while doing that. So this was an interesting book in that sense, that it has a lot of feedback and comments and things that people say, oh, why don't you change this? Oh, okay, está bien, I'll change it. And it appeared in English and in Spanish. It's now published in a book form only in English by Soho Crime. But if you look online on their Death by a Smartphone, that was the original title, you will see it in English and Spanish.
That's good to know. So what made you take the detective and put her on a cruise ship?
Well, because I wanted to write about the cruise ship. It's based on a real trip that my husband and I took, when we could still take trips.
Right.
And the story follows exactly the itinerary, leaving from the Miami port to Belize and Costa Maya and Chichen Itza. In fact, the photos that were published in the newspaper with the story are real pictures of my husband and me in the cruise. So I wanted to write about something that I was kind of familiar with, and everything that I put in the story, except for the death, of course, the crime element that is invented, no, but everything else, the visit to the shamana in Belize. Shamana is a practitioner, like a healer, female healer, with an extra ceremony that was not included at the beginning, a divination ceremony that really happened as I mentioned it, and the swimming with dolphins in Costa Maya, and the visit to the pyramids in Chichen Itza. All that was true. And normally I write about Cuba because, of course, I know quite well about life in Cuba because I lived there 30 years. And in this case, I said, well, I'm branching out a little bit in something that I'm not that familiar, but I have taken enough cruises to write about them. So that's why I thought, well, let's have a change of a scenery. So that was basically why I decided to put her on a cruise ship and to create something light and entertaining too.
Yeah.
And it's not a dark story. It's just for fun, to make readers feel that like they are taking a vacation with me.
Yes, absolutely. And I've taken several cruises myself, and I found myself walking through the ship as she was, and as they were going the different, the formal dinner restaurant versus, going to the buffet and going on the different excursions on the cruise. I found myself traveling with them, which was a wonderful thing to do right now since we're all, locked in our houses and can't go on a cruise right now. I loved how when the moment she got on the ship, and there's 5,000 passengers, and immediately her senses told her that something bad was going to happen. And then when she went to the shaman, and she said that she was going to use her skills again, that kind of reinforced that something bad was going to happen. How did you manage to pull that all together?
Well, the idea was to create a sense of suspense, from the beginning. Like she suspects that something bad is going to happen because, well, of course, it's a crime story. So I wanted people to know that something dangerous for the characters was going to be happening. And then Sarita, she's always concerned about Sarita, is her niece. The trip is actually a quinceañera present for Sarita. So she's always concerned that the girl is going to get into some kind of trouble, and whenever the shamana tells her, something's going to happen, she's always thinking, she's very protective of Sarita.
Yeah.
And until she starts thinking that maybe Sarita will have something to do with the bad things that are happening and not necessarily in the receiving end. So I try to create that suspense with her and her niece, and, well, of course, the rest of the passengers, the environment of the cruise ship that can feel at times a little dangerous because, you're in the middle of the ocean with so many people that you don't know. Like, what exactly is going to happen here? And there are 5,000. I mean, this was loosely based on the Norwegian cruise line where I have taken most of the cruises with, and that's the amount of passengers that they have. 5,000, 5,000. Like, not everybody's going to be good and nice there.
Correct. That's for sure. And I think before I took my last cruise, I might have seen one too many mystery movies that took place on cruise ships, and I was extra careful when I was walking around on the cruise ship, just because of that. So how did you manage, in this world and the way television is today and all these series, how did you manage to come up with The Terrific Two, which seems like the only television reality series that we haven't seen yet?
I just look for something that nobody could accuse me of plagiarizing it or taking something from real life and say, mira eso, she's just writing about us. No, hombre, no, let's go and sue her. No. So I try to come up with something that has nothing to do with what actually exists. In fact, I don't know. I hope that nothing like that actually exists. But that was just a crazy idea that I had when trying to, to create, to give shape to the story.
I mean, I think it would be a great series. You might want to submit that to somebody, but yeah,
I might submit it to a producer.
Yeah, that's definitely something.
No. Yeah, and the food also. I always write about food. You're saying that, and I was thinking, yeah, and in this case, I actually didn't have to write about food. It was not like the first one, the culinary mystery.
Correct.
That food was a theme, but it's like maybe I'm hungry when I sit to write. And that's why I used the element of the bakery owner and la vaqueria cubana and all that, and of course the description of the food, el cake bonbon. I was just rereading the book before our conference, to sure that I remembered everything, and I came upon the description of the cake, the bonbon cake. In Spanish le decimos el cake bonbon. I decía, ay, Dios mío, I was feeling so hungry myself, like I want something sweet, and I started looking at the refrigerator and there is nothing sweet in the house. We have to go for groceries. Grocerías, my husband says. Of course, grocerías means something else in Spanish, but when we need to go for groceries now, who is going to go for grocerías? No, pues tú. And I have to put that in the list. Some cake, something sweet, something with meringue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so several of our readers in their discussion, they want to know if you're going to, if you can please put together a blog with the recipes for some of these wonderful items that you mentioned in the book. I mean, well, right now in this one you have the bonbons and you have other foods that you've mentioned time and again in the other books in Queen of Bones and Death Comes Through the Kitchen. They're asking you to please put together a blog with some recipes because and if in your future books, yeah, you have recipes to please include. If you include food, if you can please give us a blog with those recipes because we'd love to try our hand at them.
Wow, that is so interesting that you mentioned this because when my first book came out, This Comes In Through the Kitchen, my publisher created a blog with recipes that were taken from the book. So I'm going to email you that one. That only includes the recipes from This Comes In Through the Kitchen, but I can put it in my blog now, the one that I still have, and incorporate those recipes and the ones from the new book.
Absolutely.
I haven't tried the bonbon cake yet. I have to admit that I haven't tried because that's very complicated.
Yeah.
But I can try it, and I can start the blog. That is an awesome idea, una idea maravillosa.
Great.
So I will do that, and I will send you, when we finish this conversation, I will email you the address from the blog, with the recipes from the first book, which I don't have any control over it. My publisher does, but I'm sure that she will allow me to continue with that blog, and we'll see what happens. Qué bonito, ¿no?
Thank you so much. And so many of our readers also who, in addition to being great readers, are also watch our telenovelas. And thanks to Netflix, we get to watch telenovelas from all over the world, all over Latin America. And we wondered if Carlo Alberto was based on any particular actor.
Not really. It's kind of just an idea that it was more or less based on a guy that I knew from Cuba that came to the United States, and he's now in Miami. He's trying to break into the movie scene, but of course he's a little older for that, I'm afraid. But it's kind of like him, the Botox guy and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to give away the end of the book, but we thought Marlene changed when it came to the end of the book. You know, from being the detective solving the case and getting everything done, and we were surprised a little bit with the ending. Is that how you wanted her to finish her story, her series?
Yeah, she will appear again in A Death Under the Palisades. Yeah, because from now on, I mean, we'll continue with the Havana mystery series. The first three were not too connected. Only the characters of Marlene and Padrino. Well, Padrino doesn't appear here, but the next two are also with Marlene and the same characters in Death Under the Palisades and the following. That I don't have a title for that one, but yes, I did want the characters to evolve, to change a little bit, and just have this arc of the characters that they start in one point and they end a little more complex, more layered characters than what they were at the beginning of the story. And I thought that Marlene deserved this changes, no?
Yeah.
But she will continue with La Vaquería Cubana in the next two novels. Yes.
Wonderful. So do you want to tell us about your next book coming out and when can we expect it?
Well, gracias. Sí. The next one is Death Under the Palisades. The Palisades is the allusion to the Palisades meteor showers, which in Spanish is called Las Lágrimas de San Lorenzo, the San Lawrence tears. It's a meteor shower that happens around mid-August. And this one also takes place on a cruise ship, part of it. Like half the book is on a cruise ship going from Miami to Havana. Because, you know, that these cruises were allowed for a while. Maybe they will be allowed again in the future, like for 2 years or so. And then we'll see what happens during that cruise, and the rest of the story is in Havana. And here Marlene appears at the beginning, but she's not the one who actually solves the case. In that sense, it's not so much a traditional mystery with the detectives solving the story, but the characters themselves manage to find out what they need to find out.
Okay, wonderful. And when can we expect that?
And that one, well, it was first scheduled to be published sometime early in 2021. Now it's going to appear by December of next year. But all the schedules and publication dates have been moved.
Of course.
Because, you know, what's going on. So, yeah, in December next year. But we'll probably start doing a little bit of promotion before. So, but I really like, and there is food there too, of course. So I'm going to start a part of my blog with the recipes, and I can use also recipes from the upcoming book.
Of course. Well, we look forward to that, and I'll be sure to have my elastic waist pants ready.
That
for the
is
weight I will be gaining.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Comadre, for spending time with us this evening.
Muchas gracias a ti. Thank you. Para ti y para todos los oyentes. Thank you to all our readers, our listeners. Muchas gracias for inviting me and for reading my books.
Thank you. Thank you. Comadre Karen?
Comadres Samantha, Teresa, Laura, and Julia, we are so grateful for the insightful interview and for spending time with us this evening. We enjoyed the sharing of perspectives and insights from your work and your life. We treasure the opportunity to learn about you, and we feel more connected to you. We thank Algonquin and Soho Crime for their support of this teleconference and for their generous gift of books for winners of early registration. We thank our audience for taking the time to join us for this teleconference, and thank you for those that submitted questions. And we'd like to thank Comadres Maria Ferrar for the media coordination and the Twitter chat, and to Comadre Dora Abreu for the web work she does for us. Without this volunteer leadership team, this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Mil gracias. Please remember to support our authors by writing a review of their books on sites like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, etc. Those reviews carry weight with the publishers as well as other readers. Buy books to support our authors, and if your library does not have a book you want to read, ask them to order it. And please attend your local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, it's open to everyone, men and women, and not just Latinos. Our book of the month for January is Once I Was You by Maria Hinojosa, published by Atria Books, and our additional conversations with book is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, published by Swoon Reads. Our teleconference for January will be held on Monday, January 25th. Look for the teleconference registration announcement coming soon. Once again, we wish you all a Merry Christmas and abundant blessings during the new year. Thank you for your support of our book club and Latino literature. Mil gracias to all. Stay safe. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.